Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs through the top games of 2013 Part 2, or Part 2 as we Americans like to say, although I like saying Part 2. I think that's right. Close enough. Anyway, Part 2. Now, why Part 2? Well, because you may recall, back at Christmas of 2013, I uploaded the top 10 games of 2013 video. But at the time, I put in a big fat caveat saying, hey, bear in mind, I'm only doing this because I thought it'd be kind of a cool Christmas Day video. And that I have not played all the games of 2013 yet, so it may be subject to change. It turns out it has changed, and as promised, here we are in April, and I'm going to do a quickie update to tell you what has fallen out and what has taken its place. What? Honey, that does not count as your once a month appearing on. I'm afraid that's not good enough.
No?
Yeah.
How about if I come wave again?
I don't think that's going to do it either. Little inside joke for backers of the Kickstarter campaign. One of our stretch goals was Jen appearing in more videos, but that did not actually count. Don't worry, she will do full run-throughs. Anyway, so first of all, of the 10 games, 2 of them have dropped out. 2 have taken their place. Let's talk about the 2 that dropped out. They were actually number 10 and number 9. So the old number 10, Pathfinder, has taken a big tumble, a huge tumble, and not because of any perceived drop in the quality of the game. You know, the gameplay is still fine. Like I said in my top 10 of 2013 video back in December, it's a nice, solid adventure, card hand management, cooperative game. Still plays just as well as it did. But as I said at the time, the thing that really elevated this game for me and Jen so high and put it into our top 10 wasn't the gameplay, which was just okay. It was the character persistence, the notion that Jen plays Linny, I play Harsk, the Dwarven Ranger and the Gnomish Druid, if I recall correctly. We would be able to continue playing those characters for years as more and more expansions came out. Well, I found out a few months ago I was fundamentally wrong. And so this is actually a retraction for my top 10 of 2013, and actually a retraction from my original video, where I also just raved about how awesome it is, how excited Jen and I are to keep playing with our characters for year after year after year. Apparently the publishers and developers and designers of Pathfinder decided, no, we're not going to do that. And effectively, our characters, Harsk and Linny, have a shelf life, have an expiration date. Because when the new base set comes out, something, Shackleford, something like that, it's a pirate-themed one that's coming out this year. When that one comes out, that signals the end of any support or adventures that the publisher is going to be making for players who bought Rise of the Rune Lords. So Rise of the Rune Lords is a finite. There is not an infinite amount of player advancement. You will only get to play your favorite character who you've come to love, who has a whole raft of stories. You have to basically put him on the shelf and buy a whole another expansion. And apparently this is the way it's going to work. And because of that, because there is not true persistence, there is temporary persistence, like what you find in Descent or something like that. The bottom fell out, and honestly, I've completely lost all interest in playing the game now because why keep going? I know, some people will fundamentally disagree. I've actually had quite a few very spirited discussions on Board Game Geek on this topic, and people say, it's impossible, it can't be done, there's no way that they could design the system such that you would be able to continue playing your character year after year, and I just simply say to that, hogwash. They chose not to do it. They've chosen to develop the game this way. That's their prerogative. I was a game designer for almost 20 years. I am very confident that there is always a way to solve any kind, to be able to achieve any goal you want through clever design. They're achieving the goal they want. It's not the goal that Jen and I wanted out of the game, and that's why Pathfinder, the Rise of the Rune Lords, has fallen so low for us. It's now rated down in the 7. It's a 7 as a game, and it was really the persistence that made it an 8 or a 9, but it's now fallen off. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one, which was number 9 on the list. So I was already rating the, anyway, number 9 was Caverna. And this one is also a big one. I mentioned about caveats because I wasn't sure if it was going to stay, and it certainly has. And Jen and I have played it a few more times since, and in all honesty, we just wonder, why are we playing this when we could be playing Agricola? Because and I talked about this a bit when I did my original run-through video for it as well. Now Jen and I have played it enough. We are 100% confident that this is definitely nowhere near as good as Agricola. I still stand by what I said. It takes a lot, it makes a lot of improvements to the core Agricola formula. But quite frankly, if we want to, we could apply those same improvements to regular Agricola anyway. The single best thing this game does to improve Agricola is reduces the amount of points you earn for having family members, so family members aren't quite so absolutely essential to a winning strategy. I think I might retrofit that into Agricola because that's a really big improvement. All the other improvements are tweaks. They make things different, not necessarily better, but different, and cool. And so, when we first played it, we were like, wow, this is the game we love. But so many things have been tweaked, and it's a fun, new, fresh face. But upon repeated play, the game is woefully inferior to Agricola, and that is because, as I said before, they removed the cards. And see, the thing is, Agricola itself is just an okay worker placement game. It's no great shakes. It's just all right. What makes Agricola amazing, what makes it one of Jen's and my absolute favorite games of all time, is those cards that every time you play the game, you get this big, rich, complex decks of intermeshing pieces, and you have to figure out how to build a long-term, full-game strategy based on those cards. The fact that Caverna took that out kills it. Agricola is so much better, is so much more interesting and dynamic and fresh. Every time you play Agricola, it's going to go a very different way. We have found every time we play Caverna, it tends to go the same ways because it has a static non-variable setup where the world is always the same every single time you play with almost no changes at all. If Agricola was like that, Agricola would probably be a 7. Caverna is a 7. The fact that they took out the cards and they changed it so it has no variable setup pretty much kills the game for us. I'm thinking about trading it away now, but I am going to wait because I'm sure it's been such a huge hit. I'm sure Lookout will start putting out some expansions for it, and so it'll be interesting to see what those expansions are. But that we just have no reason to play Caverna when Agricola is such a superior game for our taste, for what we're looking for. If you're the type of player who doesn't particularly care about variable setup, great, enjoy it. But for us, that Caverna has fallen out. So, what has replaced these two? Wow. I just noticed my eyes look really bloodshot. Don't worry, folks. I have not been crying over Pathfinder and Caverna and these great losses they're suffered. Everything's fine. I actually, just before I took this, made this run through, I took a shower and I think I got some soap in my eyes or something because I just noticed how red my eyes are. Anyway, though, sorry. That's totally as an aside. So what has replaced these two? Well, first of all, let's talk about what hasn't replaced them because I just have to give an honorable mention to Russian Railroads and Spyrium. Oh my God, these games are so good. They are just inches away from being top 10. These are practically tied for number 11. I have a hard time even, these are so great. Wonderful, wonderful games. I've done a run through for this. I will be doing one for this before it's too terribly long, but they didn't quite make it into the top 10, but they're so good. I just had to give them an honorable mention. But anyway, now to the new top 10. Well, we have a new number 10, so let's bring it up. Bruxelles, 1893. Now, I've actually talked about this one quite a bit. I've done a run-through for it, and this one also made it into my top 10 most, our top 10 favorite worker placement games, because this is definitely one of our favorite worker placement games now. Love this game. It's absolutely amazing. In a nutshell, it is a worker placement game. God, I'm just going to repeat this again. I've done it so many times now. Where the board where you put your workers, well, it's variable every time. It mixes and matches. But every time you put a worker down, you're actually accomplishing 3 things. You're getting the action, like a regular worker placement game. You're also engaging in a, this is upside down. You're also engaging in an auction because the more workers and the more money I give them that I put in these columns, the more I'm bidding towards these cards I can win down there. So worker placement is worker placement, it's an auction, and then it's also an area control because as I'm placing my workers, if I can be smart and surround these these icons here, I can actually score points off of them too. So there's a lot of really cool stuff in this game. That's not, the way the market works and players actually kind of share control over, rising and falling value of art on the art scene. There's a lot of really cool things in this game. But the way it handles worker placement and just fundamentally flips the script puts it in at number 10. You can hear me talk more about it in the top 10, or you can see the run through I've done for it. So that's our new number 10. Madeira is at number 9, Tash-Kalar at number 8, Bora Bora at number 7, Amerigo number 6, Glass Road number 5. So those all pretty much stayed where they were. They've all just dropped one. to make room for our new number 4. Earlier it was Glass Road, this number 4. Glass Road is number 5 now. Now, number 4, Freedom, the Underground Railroad. And I just did a run through for this the other day, and this game is amazing. Well, on two fronts. Not only is it just a really, really good, clever, fresh take on co-op gameplay. Really, really enjoy this as a co-op game. And by the way, I just want to throw out there, since I've done the run through for it, I've seen some places state that it's a great co-op game, but that it has the tendency to potentially be too samey. I've played this game 3 times now, 4 times if you count 4 times with a solo game. I've played this game 4 times now, and I reject that. This game has just as much replayability as Pandemic does. Yes, you're doing the same basic actions of moving slaves from the plantations in the south, trying to get them through this network of paths, the Underground Railroad, up to safety. Yes, you do the same basic actions every game, but every game you play, the obstacle cards that come out provide enough variation that I think this game has as much variety as Pandemic. In Pandemic, you're doing the same thing every game. You're just trying to run around the world, stop the cubes from spreading, and find all the the cures for them before time runs out. In this game, you're trying to get the slaves north, but there are enough unique elements every time you play that's unique. So I'm sorry. That's just kind of refuting what others have said that the game is a bit samey. It's definitely not. But, so it's a great co-op game, but what makes it really special is its very, very, dare I say, noble stance in the way that it presents its subject matter and deals with it in a mature and respectful way, but also in a really brilliant way, because when I talked about this in the final thoughts I did for the video, one of the things that's really amazing is obviously this is a very, very heavy subject matter, and that could be a problem for a lot of players, not because they're secretly pro-slavery or anything like that, obviously that's not the case, but that it can be a problem for folks. Well, I can see it as 2 problems. One, that hey, you shouldn't make a game about the tragedy that is slavery and the slave trade. It's no laughing matter. It should not be a fun thing, etc., etc. Now, I think, like I said, the game handles its subject matter in a respectful way, casts you in the role of heroes. I don't think that's an issue. I think the bigger issue for folks could be, wow, the subject matter is so heavy. I just don't know if I would enjoy playing this game. I'd respect it, I would admire it, but I just don't know if I want to play it over and over again. Now, I think what's brilliant about the way they handle this is the layer of abstraction they bring. There is a healthy dollop of humanity and pathos and heroism and all the rich human tapestry of everything, both pro and con, around slavery through these cards that actually introduce you to real historical characters or people of the time, real events that shaped a nation, and so it's a really eye-opening game. As you play these cards, if you read the little bits, you can really get kind of swept up in the history and it becoming a very emotional roller coaster of a game. I mean, I openly wept when I was actually doing my final thoughts for this because it got to me so hard. But if you want, you can ignore that flavor text, for lack of a better term, and just treat the cards as gameplay mechanisms. Okay, well, this one lets me move a cube 3 spaces. This one lets me, and so it can create a level of abstraction so you can enjoy this game solely as a logistics exercise of trying to, achieve certain goals. You could almost play it as an abstract. And, I don't think of that as a cop-out. To me, it's a really clever way to, straddle the line of making a game you can just enjoy as a game. And you can play over and over again and, just view it as we're working together to try to achieve this goal. And so you don't have to get weighed down too heavily by, the weight of history. You can just enjoy it for fun. But if you play it another way where you actually get kind of swept up in the drama and the history and the reality of it by reading those, the flavor text on those cards, you can really appreciate it on a very, very different level. And so that's what I think really makes the game brilliant and puts it in the top 10. Now, actually, as an update, for folks who actually watched my my final thoughts for Freedom, I did mention at the time that Jen had not played it yet. Jen's gotten back. We've now played it together, and a lot of people asked, well, what did Jen think? What did Jen think? So I am going to report that for Jen, in spite of what I just said about how this game can be played as more like an abstract exercise, so you can just enjoy it as a game, or you can play it, in a more personal and touching way, Jen has a very, very hard time separating it. Even though, I saw you can just think of them as cubes, she could not stop. She actually got so wrapped up in the reality of the simulation we were playing, she refused to roll the slave catcher dice because she said, I don't want to be responsible. She just couldn't handle it. She could not separate the fantasy of this game, the gameplay, from the reality. And so it is a very, for her, it's too heavy a topic to be able to go back, hey, let's play Freedom again, because for her, it's still just going to be too heavy, not in gameplay, but just in terms of theme. So that, for folks who are curious, that's how she feels about it. And so, that's another side of the coin. For me, but you have to remember, Jen, she's super sensitive. Jen is the woman who literally, when we would play Village, could not bring herself to let any of her little meeples die, or grow old and die. And that game was too heavy for her as well, just because of the mortality. Your meeples can grow old and die, and that's part of gameplay. So Jen is uber sensitive to theme in game. So take that with a grain of salt. I think for most folks, the game will still work. But if you're uber sensitive, if you're the type who would play Village and decide, oh, I cannot handle the fact that my meeples are dying of old age, then Freedom might be a little too heavy for you as well. But anyway, so that is the update, folks. And then continuing, we get down to SOS Titanic is still number 3. I was almost rethinking that again, but then I played it a few more times, and I'm going to keep it there. It's such an amazing game. I was thinking it was just mostly nostalgia for having played Klondike with my dad that made me put it so high, but no, it deserves to be there. At number 3, it's just such an incredible, solid, fun game. Klondike is a fun activity, a fun game to begin with, but it adds so much theme and is so clever and so brilliant. I'm going to leave SOS Titanic where it is on its own merits, not on nostalgia. And then Forbidden Desert number 2 and Nations number 1. That's really interesting. That means for 2013, of my top 10, 3 of them, is that right? 3 of them were cooperative games. That's awesome. So 2013, the year of the co-ops for me and Jen. But, actually I should say I have played Nations a few more times. In fact, I've also played Nations with a full player count. It still stays as my number 1 best game of the year. I know a lot of people have problems with it at that high. They say the game takes too long. I did not find that to be the case at all. The game still flew by. It was a very long game, playing with a full player count, but it still went quick. I was always engaged every step of the way. Very, very exciting. I can see now why people say the game can get a little bit more brutal with more players, because it definitely does. But still, thought it was a great, fantastic, still easily Nations number 1 game for 2013. And there you go, folks. That's it. 2013, part 2. Now, if you'd like to know a little bit more, that's only the top 10 or 12, because I gave Russian Railroads and Spyrium honorable mentions. If you would like to know the top 80, because as of today, Jen and I have played 80 new titles that came out in 2013. Actually, I haven't finished it right now. By the time this video is uploaded, I will have finished making my yearly geek list, where I actually do a quick little summary of every single game we played. If you'd like to see that, the links are in the show notes below, so you can go check that out and find out what number 80, the bottom of the line is. Oh, what the heck, I'll spoil the surprise. The bottom is Lost Legacy. That's right, number 80, Lost Legacy. Number 1, well, you just heard it, is Nations. But wouldn't you like to know numbers 11 through 79? Well, you can check that out in the geek list. It's down below. I do this for every year. I've done it for 2011 and 2012 as well. I'll eventually retrofit it and do it for earlier years. But if you'd like to know a little bit more about the year as a whole and how Jen and I rated all 80 games that we played, you can check that out. And otherwise, I'm going to stop it right there and wish you guys a very happy 2014. Let's find out in a year's time what the best games of this year will be. Okay, folks, thanks a lot. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.